Usually, like, when we think about virtual reality, there is this default expectation that it's just pure entertainment.
Right, exactly.
You picture, strapping a heavy, super expensive computer to your face, loading up a video game, and just totally tuning out the world. It is treated as a luxury item.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, it's an escape for people who can actually afford to escape.
Yeah, which is most people's experience with it.
Right. But then you step into the world of healthcare, and specifically substance use disorder treatment, and suddenly that exact same technology is flipped completely on its head. We are looking at a landscape today where VR is not a toy. It's a highly engineered, deeply pragmatic lifeline.
And we really need to emphasize here, we are not talking about outfitting luxury, high-end rehabilitation centers in Malibu or somewhere like that. We are looking at how this is being deployed for marginalized, low-income patients.
Which is just fascinating. And that is the core of today's deep dive. Welcome to it, by the way. We are exploring a 501c3 initiative called the Recovery Project, which notably is actually spearheaded by former addicts and recovery allies.
Yeah, that grassroots element is key to their whole approach.
Definitely. Their mission is to democratize substance use disorder treatment through what they call spatial computing. And for anyone listening who might be unfamiliar with that term, spatial computing essentially means using physical space to interact with digital information.
Right, like instead of looking down at a flat screen in your hand, the digital environment actually surrounds you.
Exactly. And to guide us today, we have a fascinating stack of source materials from them. We've got clinical workflows, medical billing maps, and a highly, highly detailed investment proposal for a joint venture under an entity called the Maryland Recovery Network, LLC.
It's honestly a rare look under the hood of medical innovation because, we are seeing both the clinical idealism of wanting to help marginalized populations and then the hard mathematical architecture required to actually make that idealism survive out in the real world.
Totally. And here is the hook for you, the listener. Well, you might think of VR as this $500 piece of hardware. Today, we are going to explore how a $7.50 piece of cardboard,
Yep, literal cardboard.
combined with a sharp financial strategy called the infinite loop, are being used to build a scalable, highly profitable therapeutic ecosystem. Think of this as a journey into how cutting-edge tech and really aggressive business modeling intersect to solve a massive social disparity.
To really grasp the gravity of this deployment, we have to start with the baseline problem they're trying to solve. The sources paint a stark contrast between two very different realities in addiction treatment right now.
Right, the two tiers of care.
Exactly. They outline what they call high-resource treatment versus the low-income reality.
Let's be real. If you have resources, treatment is a very centralized, organized experience. You check into a nice facility, your meals are planned out for you, your therapy is completely scheduled, and everything is tracked.
It's a bubble.
Yeah, a comfortable bubble. But if you lack financial resources, your path into long-term recovery is fundamentally broken. You're basically dealing with intensive outpatient care, or IOP, which the sources describe as relying incredibly heavily on static lectures and standard workbooks.
Imagine stepping into that environment for a second. You are handed physical materials scattered across these disparate lectures led by different providers. You are sitting in a room with harsh fluorescent lights, surrounded by other people who are also, frankly, struggling.
Okay, let's unpack this reality. Because if you are actively struggling with addiction or you are in early recovery, your brain chemistry is wildly out of balance.
Oh, completely. Your attention span is going to be incredibly fragile at that point.
Right. So sitting in a traditional IOP environment, trying to read a photocopied workbook, it requires a massive amount of cognitive effort just to focus. Your mind is a million miles away, worrying about housing or withdrawal or, triggers.
And that scattered, high-friction environment is exactly what the VR recovery method is designed to replace. Instead of a pile of paper workbooks and some guy at a whiteboard, they offer a unified, trackable digital curriculum housed entirely within a secure headset application.
And the engagement numbers they project are staggering. They are claiming a 300% boost in patient engagement.
Which sounds crazy until you think about the mechanics of why that works.
Exactly. It is like putting blinders on a racehorse. The headset physically blocks out your peripheral vision and ambient noise. It forcibly removes the visual and auditory distractions of the real world.
Which drastically lowers the cognitive load required to just pay attention. You literally can't look at your phone. You can't stare out the window.
Yeah, it's like comparing traditional rehab to sitting in high school detention reading a dry textbook, whereas this VR method sounds like an interactive 360-degree flight simulator for your brain.
That's a great way to put it. And the curriculum they put inside those blinders is extensive. The sources detail a 60-day library featuring around 40 to 50 distinct therapeutic recovery topics.
That's a lot of content. How is it delivered?
They break these down into highly structured 30-minute episodes, which are specifically designed for paced consumption. A patient gets exactly one lesson per day over a standard inpatient or IOP program.
So if I'm a patient, what do I actually see when I put this thing on?
Well, within that 30-minute module, they're dropped into a full 360-degree video immersion. So they might find themselves sitting in a serene, natural environment, or maybe a structured virtual classroom.
Okay.
The lesson integrates standard 12-step program pillars like trigger avoidance or emotional regulation, and it couples that visual immersion with a companion Q&A workbook integration. So the patient isn't just passively watching a video.
They're interacting with it.
Right. They are
Amazing.
actively responding to prompts within this highly controlled virtual space.
That sounds incredible from a clinical perspective. But let me deduce the obvious roadblock here because VR is notoriously expensive. We are talking about democratizing access for marginalized low-income populations, right?
Well-
A nonprofit clinic that's just struggling to keep the lights on cannot afford to buy 30 Apple Vision Pros or Oculus headsets for a rotating door of patients. The math just does not work at all.
It doesn't. And the materials actually detail a universal clinical adoption model to solve that exact hardware bottleneck. They do outline a premium individual platform utilizing standalone Oculus ecosystems, but they note that is strictly reserved for high-end facilities.
Okay, so what about the nonprofits?
The core innovation for the nonprofit sector is their scalable inpatient model.
Ah, and this is where that $7 piece of cardboard comes into play.
Exactly. They utilize off-the-shelf Android mobile devices, which cost about $40 wholesale. And those cheap smartphones are paired with custom-branded Google Cardboard headsets that cost just $7.50.
Oh, wow. That completely flips the economics of deployment.
Yeah,
I mean, a clinic can outfit an entire class of 30 patients for less than the cost of a single high-end consumer VR headset. The patient just slides the Android phone into the cardboard viewer and boom, they're instantly inside that premium 360-degree environment.
And that low barrier to entry is maintained throughout the entire patient journey. The sources actually map this out chronologically as a customized pathway. And the very first step of that pathway begins before the patient ever even arrives at a facility,
Wait, really? How does that work?
by utilizing virtual facility tours.
Okay, yeah. The sources mention software like Walkino and Gothru being attached to a facility's Google Maps listing. Can you explain how that works for someone actively seeking treatment?
Yeah, so think of the underlying technology of Google Street View, but brought inside the walls of a building.
Okay.
A massive hurdle for individuals seeking inpatient help is the fear of the unknown. Handing over your autonomy to an institution is terrifying. So this infrastructure allows patients, or maybe their caseworkers, to use their phone to virtually walk down the halls of a rehab center.
Oh, that's smart.
They can look inside the cafeteria, inspect the group rooms in full 360 degrees. It essentially eliminates the friction of intake by letting them select the environment that best fits their needs before they even pack a bag.
That is brilliant. But building a pipeline like that requires serious technical chops. And the documents refer to the creator of this infrastructure as the architect.
Yeah, that's the title they use.
And we are looking at a Google Master Photographer since 2013, someone who actually won the 2017 Google Agency of the Year Award for mapping out spaces for the Dallas Mavericks. And they have patented this specific iOS and Android application infrastructure.
And that level of top-tier engineering is also why the software framework is compiled using a platform called InstaVR. Running heavy 4K 360-degree video files typically requires massive bandwidth.
Which nonprofit clinics definitely do not have.
Exactly. Nonprofit clinics generally do not have enterprise-grade Wi-Fi. And so InstaVR allows the entire curriculum to be compiled and run locally right on those cheap Android phones, bypassing the need for a constant internet connection entirely.
Here is where the tech stack gets incredibly ambitious, though. According to the medical device patent workflow, the most advanced element is the AI integration.
Yes.
While the patient is in the VR experience, working through their Q&A prompts, the system captures their verbal responses.
Right. The phone's microphone
Yeah.
utilizes natural language processing to feed that audio directly into a recovery topic database.
Break down the mechanism of that feedback loop for us. How does a spoken word actually alter the therapy?
So if a patient is responding to a virtual prompt and says a phrase like, I am worried about my old neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
the AI tags the keyword neighborhood as an environmental trigger.
Okay.
The database logs that has metadata to the patient's profile, and the system dynamically adjusts the therapeutic path. So the next day's 30-minute episode might automatically pivot to focus specifically on strategies for navigating environmental triggers. It is literally tailoring the clinical response based on the patient's actual words.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, and I have to pause and push back on the broader implication of that. We have an artificial intelligence listening to a patient who is sitting in an isolated cardboard box, algorithmically assigning their next therapy module. The bedrock of addiction recovery has always been human connection, right? One addict sharing their experience with another. Doesn't automating this process effectively replace the human element of group therapy? Doesn't that sort of defeat the purpose?
It's a very valid concern,
Yeah.
and the sources address that structural concern through what they call the immersive sandbox model. The stated goal of the architecture is not to replace the human clinician at all. It is to scale their reach.
Okay, walk me through what this sandbox looks like in a real physical clinic.
Picture a large group room. You have one licensed mental health provider, or MHP.
Okay.
Under a traditional model, trying to guide 30 highly distracted patients through a complex lecture is nearly impossible. It requires constant localized redirection.
Just telling people to pay attention over and over.
Exactly. But in the immersive sandbox, that single MHP acts as a clinical supervisor. All 30 patients put on their headsets and are simultaneously guided through the 30-minute VR module. The technology handles the rote delivery of the educational curriculum and basically forces focus.
Right, so the VR acts as the textbook, keeping everyone locked in.
Exactly. And then comes the crucial transition. Once the 30-minute module ends, the patients remove the headsets. The system seamlessly transitions them into a unified, instructor-led Q&A workshop.
Oh, I see.
So the MHP now leads a group of patients who have all just absorbed the exact same information without distraction. Plus, the provider is armed with the keyword data the AI gathered during the session. The technology does the heavy lifting of engagement, which actually enhances the quality and depth of the human-to-human group discussion that follows.
That makes a lot of sense. It doesn't replace the therapist, it just gives them superpowers, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so we have this highly engaging, incredibly scalable clinical model, but great ideas in healthcare die every single day if they cannot sustain themselves financially.
Oh, absolutely. To deploy this on a massive scale, the blueprint has to incorporate hard economics. And the materials pivot sharply right here to detail established CPT codes.
Just for a bit of context for you listening, CPT codes are the language healthcare providers use to document medical services so they can bill insurance companies. You simply do not get paid unless you can map your service to a specific code.
And the Recovery Project maps their immersive delivery directly to these billing structures. They highlight code W7022, which covers substance use disorder non-tobacco lessons over 20 minutes, paying roughly $24.60 per session.
Okay.
They also utilize code 90853 for group psychotherapy, which pays about $23.93 per session.
But the really clever engineering happens with their use of code 90785 for interactive complexity. Usually, that modifier is applied when a patient has severe communication barriers. Let's dig into how a literal cardboard VR headset legally qualifies for that modifier.
It's pretty genius. Substance use disorder often creates immense defensive communication barriers. Patients might be non-responsive, hostile, or just severely withdrawn.
Right.
The sources note that the use of physical devices to communicate specifically satisfies the requirement for this code. The VR headset acts as an assistive communication tool. It bypasses the patient's defensive barriers by immersing them in a neutral digital environment, which legally triggers that higher billing rate.
Wow. And when you apply those reimbursement rates to the scale of the immersive sandbox we just talked about, the hourly cash flow generation is immense.
It's massive.
Like in their scenario A, they model running high-volume SUD lessons with 20 patients. At roughly $25 a lesson, executing three 20-minute lessons per hour generates $1,500 an hour. That is a massive injection of capital for a nonprofit clinic.
And that revenue potential sets the stage for what is honestly the most aggressive document in the stack. It's an investment pitch aimed at doctors for the Maryland Recovery Network, LLC, or MRN.
Right. This document proposes a joint venture. They are asking a potential partner for a $10,000 initial investment.
Just 10 grand.
Yeah, but the projected return on that investment is framed as a diversified annual return of 2,198%.
Which is an insane number.
Right, meaning a $10,000 investment is projected to yield $219,840 in annual net profit.
And to understand how a $10,000 layout generates almost $250,000 a year, we have to examine this strategy they call the infinite loop.
Okay, let's break this down.
They split that initial investment into two equal halves.
So where does the first $5,000 go?
The first $5,000 goes into establishing a sober living house. They define this as high asset, low margin investment.
Got it. And that real estate secures a capacity of what, 10 residents?
Yes, 10 residents. And each resident pays $800 a month in rent. After covering operating expenses like a lease, utilities, and insurance, the sober living house nets about $3,500 a month. So it is a stable physical asset, but it is not the massive multiplier driving that crazy return.
The multiplier is the second half of the split. The other $5,000 goes into the MRN clinical software, which they define as low asset, high scale.
Exactly. And here is the actual architecture of the infinite loop. The 10 residents living in the sober living house become the guaranteed clients for the MRN software.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The software delivers 3 therapeutic lessons a week at a billed rate of $136 per lesson. That generates $1,632 per client per month.
And what's the overhead on that?
Since the cloud hosting and tech support overhead is exceptionally low, they estimate it at just $1,500 a month total. The net monthly profit on the software side approaches $15,000.
Let me just connect the dots on the underlying business mechanism here because it's wild. In the tech world, the biggest killer of any software platform is customer acquisition cost. Finding and onboarding users is incredibly expensive.
Always.
But by structuring the investment this way, you drive your customer acquisition cost to absolute zero. The people renting the beds in your real estate asset are contractually, or at least circumstantially, bound to use your software asset.
And the materials address this dynamic explicitly in the risk stability analysis section of the pitch. They actually warn the investor that the MRN software, while highly profitable, is inherently unstable as a standalone entity.
Because software platforms need a constant influx of users to survive.
Precisely. So by pairing the software investment with the real estate asset, they're mitigating the risk of user churn. The partner is not just buying a tech company, they're buying a guaranteed distribution channel.
That is wild.
The physical real estate provides the stability and the built-in user base required to sustain the high-margin digital billing.
So what does this all mean? Look at this purely from an economic perspective for a second. You are asking a passive capital partner to own the roof over a marginalized patient's head, while simultaneously owning the proprietary software that those exact same patients must use for their therapy.
Yeah, that's the setup.
You are structurally engineering a captive audience to generate a massive return. I mean, is this brilliant sustainability or is it slightly exploitative?
Well, the economic reality in the pitch is very impartial about this, is that marginalized low-income addiction care is historically incredibly difficult to fund.
That's very true.
The sector relies heavily on dwindling public grants and severely strained nonprofit budgets. The infinite loop strategy recognizes that deficit. By engineering a model with a zero customer acquisition cost and guaranteed billing, it creates an undeniable financial incentive for high-net-worth investors to pour capital into low-income care that might otherwise simply not exist.
So it leverages aggressive corporate strategy to solve a social deficit. You get private capital to fund the sober living houses, the $7 cardboard headsets, and the 60-day recovery curriculum, all because the back-end software billing makes the entire ecosystem undeniably lucrative for the investor.
Exactly. The infinite loop ensures that the premium centralized resources which the 501c3 set out to build in their original mission are financially sustainable without relying on charity alone. It is really a masterclass in combining spatial computing with rigorous healthcare economics.
It is a lot to synthesize. We started by looking at a completely broken, fragmented system where marginalized patients were left reading photocopied workbooks, struggling to focus through withdrawal.
And we have traced how The recovery project is attempting to completely rewrite that reality.
Yeah. They're using 360-degree environments to boost engagement by acting as blinders to the chaotic real world. They're deploying this at scale using $40 phones and cardboard headsets. They're streamlining intake with Google Street View technology, utilizing natural language processing to tailor the curriculum, and funding the entire ecosystem through an intensely profitable synergy between physical real estate and digital medical billing.
They basically moved from a scattered physical model to a unified digital curriculum and solved the massive funding bottleneck by making the solution an irresistible investment vehicle.
Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with today. We have just explored how this infinite loop model successfully pairs a physical housing need with high-margin digital therapeutic tools to make marginalized care immensely profitable and therefore accessible.
Right. Think about the broader applications of that business architecture. If a $7 piece of cardboard and a zero customer acquisition real estate loop can successfully fund substance use recovery, could this exact blueprint be the key to solving other massive, historically underfunded social crises?
That's the real question.
Could you apply the infinite loop to the homelessness crisis? Could you use it to revolutionize elder care and assisted living facilities? Because if sharp financial modeling can turn a piece of cardboard into a lifeline, it makes you wonder what else is waiting to be reimagined.